Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we have some crazy news coming out of Mali. As many of you might have seen recently, there has been a massive coup. As this Al Jazeera article says, Mali coup leaders ECOWAS fail to reach agreement on transition. Regional bloc military officers behind overthrow of President Keïta failed to reach agreement on return to civilian rule. The issue is that what we're witnessing in Mali has been considered by many a US-backed coup, and we know how those work out. We have this Press TV article, US-backed coup in Mali, that kind of explains it. We have this article out of the Washington Post. Mali coup leader was trained by US military. Well, we have to go into that, don't we? As this Zero Hedge article says, Mali coup leader is a US-trained military officer. So we're going to go into that today and explain the underlying issue here and what it really leads us to believe, because obviously there's a lot of conflicting facts in this matter, and not a lot of people are putting the puzzle pieces together as well as they should, and that's why we're here as independent media. Anyway, before we get into it, make sure to hit that like button, share on social media to get around the shadow banning, and of course, check those links below. We got a lot of ways that you can fund independent media, as we are completely viewer funded and completely demonetized by YouTube. You can check out GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. You can pledge on Flote, and speaking of Flote, flote.app, you can join the independent social media networks that we are going to as we leave YouTube. Largely, we're leaving YouTube on November 5th, only to post trailers after that point. Remember the 5th of November. So you can join us on Flote.app, BitChute, LBRY, and Minds, all linked below. And also, make sure to join our newsletter at www.iamband.com. There's many ways you can support independent media going forward. It's never been more important. Anyway, let's go get into this article here. As it says, Mali coup leader is a US-trained military officer. I'm sure there's nothing nefarious there, as this article goes into. In another embarrassment for U.S. training programs for international forces, this past week's coup in Mali found itself linked to an American training program. Colonel Assimi Goita, the new dictator of Mali, graduated from U.S. training courses. Oh, this is sounding a lot like Venezuela's Guaido, isn't it? It's interesting how we keep seeing this happen all over the world. I wonder if the U.S. is building an empire. Who could possibly think such a thing? Anyway, as this article continues here, it says, that's a problem for Washington. Also, as photos of Guaido were featured heavily on U.S. military sites regarding the training operations. The military has so far avoided comment on the matter, though some media are reporting that the photographs were disappearing from the sites when the news started to break. Interesting. You can see a photo there. As the article continues, it says, it looks bad, but also isn't shocking. Mali's last coup in 2012 saw the exact same thing, with Captain Amadou Sonogo having been through 6 training missions with the U.S. before the coup. Meanwhile, foreign policy reports that the United States has halted all security assistance training and support for Malian military forces that carried out a coup in the West African country after new details emerged that the coup was orchestrated in part by military officers who received training from the U.S. military. By the way, I have been right by Mali. Like I've been to Mauritania, as many of you might know. I hitchhiked down, largely hitchhiked down the west coast of Africa last year in the Sahara, from Morocco, Western Sahara, Mauritania, and deep into the Sahara Desert in the reshot structure close to Mali, as a matter of fact. I have been in the region, and absolutely wonderful people that constantly get hit hard by governments, their own foreign governments like the United States, foreign governments like France, foreign governments like China, and we'll go into that further in a moment. But carrying on here, as it says, and further, the report continues, the Washington Post first reported that Guaido, the head of the new junta, was trained by U.S. and European forces. Junta meaning kind of a military force that's taken over after a coup or a power grab of some kind, just for your knowledge there. It says, including U.S. Special Operations Forces. Lieutenant Colonel Anton Semmelroth, a Pentagon spokesperson, told Foreign Policy in a statement that the U.S. military is looking into other Malians who have participated in U.S. training, and though counter to that training, may have played a role in the recent mutiny. Interesting. And we also heard about the U.S. officers that were recently arrested in Venezuela for trying to start another coup. Governments manipulating other governments, organized crime, attacking organized crime, and the people at the bottom always suffer the most. As it continues here, it says, this is a really bad way to look innocent, Department of Defense, and it shows all these images connecting the leaders here. The number of coup leaders, war criminals, and general bad actors in the training program has raised concerns that the Pentagon is too heavily focused on efficiency and fostering relationships with Western military bureaucracies without focus enough on respect for civilian governance and democracies. And of course, what we see in places like Mali is there's already vast poverty, and it's not just because of the government. In that case, it's because, well, they're bordering on, you know, the Sahara Desert and just a little bit of jungle, and they are in a terrain where a lot of the land is not very farmable, and there's a lot of problems that comes with that because then they end up dependent on relief programs from other countries around the world. They aren't able to be made independent themselves, and they're being made more and more dependent by other foreign governments. We have articles like this one out of Reuters. U.S. halts military cooperation with Mali as coup supporters celebrate. The United States said on Friday it has suspended cooperation with Mali's military in response to the overthrow of the president as thousands gathered in the capital to celebrate the junta's takeover. We also see similar things. We saw similar things in Libya. We saw similar things in Iraq, of course, and now Iraq has kind of risen up independently in many places like Iraqi Kurdistan, where they have voted to kick the U.S. out of the country. That's the democracy the U.S. claimed they wanted to bring Iraq after killing millions of people there. And then the Iraqi people say, we don't want you here. And then they say, well, it's our democracy, not yours, basically, and say, we're going to stay there anyway and try and start wars with Iran. Also, we have articles like this one out of the Associated Press. French troops stay in Mali after coup. No end in sight. Well, France has been heavily involved in Mali and the whole Western African area for a century now, more than that. And of course, they were heavily involved in Vietnam before FDR armed and funded Ho Chi Minh against, well, they didn't, not necessarily against anyone, but it was used against France. And then it led to the Vietnam War eventually a few decades later. Let's look at the president of Mali, who, of course, is Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, who was overthrown here. And it's interesting because we have interesting information about how he put people in power, like the technocrat, the so-called technocrat, a banking official, Umar Tadam Lee, as prime minister. And looking at that person's page, this person, in all seriousness, is probably very well connected with China, considering his technocratic approach to the economy and being a special advisor at the Central Bank of Western African States. Very much insiders, and obviously they're probably propped up by China in the first place. And the guy was born, get this, in Paris, France, though, since so many people speak French in the area of Mali. It obviously isn't difficult to go in there and take over territory as a power figure. It only takes a small Google search to see that Mali has gotten loans from China as well, and there's insane amounts of money from China. Mali wins $210 million infrastructure loan from China, according to Reuters, in December 31st, 2010. So there is this issue of AFRICOM, where we have the U.S. and China, who really, at the end of the day, are allies, though they pretend to be against each other. They've been propping up each other, and with Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong in the early 70s to create an alliance, an artificial alliance to monopolize Chinese trade, leading into the Trilateral Commission with Zbigniew Brzezinski and the creation of a technocratic approach in Africa. Basically, China, like the IMF does and like the US does, loans more money than the countries can afford to pay back, and then those countries become dependent on the country that loaned them the money as they take over. It's an approach that has been happening for a long time. Again, the IMF does it, and now it looks like the US is going for military while China goes for monetary. And this is how you take over a region. And I feel so bad for the people who actually live there, because they're just being abused, used and abused by government over and over and over again. And they get the butt end of this. They get the small stick, and basically they get sacrificed for the king and the queen under the guise of helping. The reason the countries stay poor is two things, two factors. Government, then government goes after government, and the government goes after government, and you go through this cycle over and over and over again, a Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat. And then, on top of that, you end up with the weather situation. Mali has a really, really rough weather situation, because they, again, are so heavily in like the Sahara mixed with jungle foliage, which the jungle is lush, but The desert is not so much, and the heat is unbelievable out there. Let me tell you, I've been around that region. It's insane. And most people don't have air conditioning, and most people are, working at night rather than in the day to avoid the heat, which I saw in Mauritania everywhere I went, which, by the way, while I was in Mauritania, I saw a lot of Chinese symbolism out there as well. Again, China taking over the monetary aspect while the U.S. takes over the military aspect, and then they control these countries, play them against each other, and I think they try to depopulate as much as they can, get people at heel. And it's their attempt to take over the world in such a huge continent like Africa, which, by the way, takes unbelievable amount of time to drive from the top to the bottom of it. It's way bigger than it looks on the map, I'm telling you. Anyway, I'm going to continue to go into the story as it develops. We still need to know more information before we go any further in reporting this information, but keep this in mind. Let people know that the U.S. is clearly trying to intervene in Mali. We always hear about meddling in the elections, Russia meddling in the U.S. election, whatever it might be. Meanwhile, the U.S. and China tend to meddle more in other countries' affairs than any other country in the world. It's just absolutely insane. Maybe Israel, maybe to some extent Russia, but I mean, largely it's U.S., China, and Israel, I think, would probably be the biggest ones, alongside countries like France and Britain, etc., Germany, the EU. It's just insane because this is just a massive power complex worldwide that they've been working on for decades, over a century. And the people suffer the most, but they always come with shiny messages of hope and change and freedom, and they deliver the exact opposite. Anyway, I appreciate everyone watching. Make sure to hit that like button, check those links below. Join us on our newsletter at www.iamband.com. It takes 2 seconds to just put your email in. We're not going to spam you. We really appreciate you. It really helps us out, as keeping us alive. Also, GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. We are completely viewer funded. Again, we were completely demonetized by YouTube by going against a Chinese control grid called the World Health Organization, which we're not allowed to criticize. So there you have that, and we will not be on YouTube much longer. They're either going to take us down by force or we're going to leave and tell everyone where to go. And if you join us on those places, we really appreciate it. Flote.app, BitChute, LBRY, and Minds. And of course, we have Bitcoin addresses below. Many ways you can help keep independent media alive. We really appreciate all your help, everyone. You guys are all awesome. And I guess we'll see you soon. Anyway, until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change. My friends, it is go time. We are completely demonetized on YouTube, and we depend on the viewer to stay alive and spread the message of freedom and truth. So check those links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, anything you guys could do to help keep independent media alive helps enormously in helping spread this message to the masses. So make sure to check those links. Donate to our Bitcoin address on the screen or below. We really appreciate anything you could do to keep us alive. You could check those links below for Cointree as well, where you can find other cryptocurrencies that you can donate and keep WAM alive. Find us on flote.app, flote.app, as well as BitChute and LBRY and Minds. We're on all the other platforms. We are leaving YouTube soon, so make sure to find us at those sites because it's the only way we can keep talking to you, the masses, the great people that actually care about the future of free humanity. Also, join our new newsletter at www.iamband.com. Anything helps at this point, guys. We need to support free information online. This is the most difficult time in our history, and it takes a lot of hard work to keep our message alive in the face of great evils that have taken over the propaganda news on television as well as on YouTube, where YouTube decides what you can or cannot see. We need your help, my friends. So I really appreciate anything you guys can do. Check those links. There's many ways you can help. Until next time, though, thanks, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
you.